Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Connery Report wherever you get your podcast. You watch it on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. You can read my work on ESPN.com. I have stories up now about the hiring, of course, of Washington Commanders coach Dan Quinn. And in a minute, I'm going to have on Orlando Ledbetter, who covered Quinn for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution when Quinn was with the Falcons. So he can give you a lot of insight into what happened there with Quinn as a coach. Were the problems his coaching, or were the problems his personnel moves, which he's not going to be responsible for here in Washington? So learn a lot from D, and I appreciate him coming on. And again, you're going to find out some insight into what happened there, something that you can learn. Again, not everything was great, man. I've told you that I've heard a lot of good things about Dan Quinn. He's not a perfect coach. I heard a lot of good things about everybody else in this process. None of them were perfect coaches because there were unknowns to each. Would Ben Johnson have been a good head coach? We know what kind of a play caller he is. He's really good. Can he go identify talent? I don't know. Is Mike McDonald, is he going to be the kind of, is he a dynamic leader? I don't know. I think there were questions about that in Baltimore, but we know he's a terrific play caller. With Dan Quinn, we know that he had some success in Atlanta. We also know that, his team lost a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. They were there, though. We also know that he got fired from there. And we also know he's a really good defensive coordinator. Can he sustain success as a head coach? We'll find out. So, and is he in a better spot to do so than he was in Atlanta? So all that stuff. But I understand the questions that people have regarding him. I have the same questions about a lot of guys. And again, nothing is a slam dunk success. I will always keep saying this, and I'm going to say it to D. It's all about hiring the staff and then what you do at quarterback, because they haven't solved that position here for a long time. Some coaches have been able to do okay while developing one, but it's really hard to win consistently until you find one. So going to be a big key for Quinn, and then whomever he hires as the OC, and even as DC, because if he, I know he called some plays in Atlanta, but he also had a coordinator, and I think they're going to be entrusted with doing a lot as well. So anyway, get into a lot of stuff with Orlando. You don't need anything more from me. I have nothing more to add. We'll get more into the coaching search or the assistant coaching search on Monday. I'm expecting the press conference to be Monday. That's not set in stone yet, so we don't know. And also, as a program note for you, I'm going to be doing a private Zoom session for the Gold members on early Friday evening. Stay tuned for that. That show, that's a private Zoom for the Gold, and then it will be available to the other members after I'm done. So if you want to become a member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page. You'll see the word join. Click on that. Find your level, the membership tier level that you were interested in joining, and go from there. And I appreciate everybody who does. So thank you very much. Now, here's my conversation with D. Orlando Ledbetter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, talking Dan Quinn. Well, D, I wanted to have you on because you covered Dan Quinn with the Falcons. So I'm just curious, in general, what do you think Washington is getting in a head coach?
Yeah, Dan's an enthusiastic leader. He's learned under Pete Carroll and with Gus Bradley and those guys out in Seattle. The Legion of Boom was already built by the time he got there, and he tried to recreate that here in Atlanta, and looked to be off to a good start. Going to the Super Bowl in year 2, but after that, people thinking that the Super Bowl. That's the elephant in the room here, right?
Right.
People think that after the Super Bowl they never recovered. No, that wasn't the case. They had a top 10 defense. The next year might have been his best job of coaching in 2017 to get them back to the playoffs, and they're on the 1 yard line, ready to go in and win and beat the Eagles and Nick Foles. They were favored in that game. They dropped the interception before, but so they didn't get it done, and that team competed for 2 Super Bowls in my mind, and after that, injuries started to affect the defense he was building, and losing Kyle Shanahan to the 49ers after Super Bowl 51 was also a big blow that the Falcons could not overcome.
So let's look at like what went right early in his tenure. What were some of the things that they did well under him, and just what buttons did he push that were good? Like what qualities that really stood out?
Yeah, the physicality of the defense. They wanted to attack offenses, and he went out and got some young players that could do that. They had to start by getting fast. Their whole thing was, playing fast and attacking because that's what the Saints were. Right. So if they were going to do anything in the NFC South, they were going to have to catch up to Drew Brees and the Saints. They had fallen off a little bit. So they needed speed with these smallish linebackers to get after Kamara and, the Bush, whoever it was Bush, Kamara, all kind of ran together at that spot. And, it went from Marcus Colston to, Big Mike Thomas. But, yeah, they had to catch up to them and play, more than just, the cover 2 shell and, just tackle really hard. They started out with that, but then it evolved into other things.
How did players receive him?
How did players?
What'd they think of him?
Oh, they love Coach Dan. He was players. You hate saying players coach, but they never did not play hard. I mean, even when they were blowing coverages and some of the draft picks didn't work out. They still tried to play hard. So even when they got up, they started blowing leads a lot. To Dallas comes to mind, Chicago at home. The Dallas one was crazy where they stood at it was an onside kick and they stood and looked at the ball.
Oh yeah.
Instead of diving on it. So yeah, it got bad, coaching wise, he moving folks around, not comfortable with his staff, had Raheem on offense, moving back to defense. Just a lot of juggling throughout his coaching tenure here that led to probably some of that inconsistent play. But the players loved him and they played for him, even when they weren't any good at the end there.
And I want to get to that staff because that to me was obviously a big part of it. But with the players, and it's funny, D, because like I've talked to a lot of people who really like and respect him. They coach with them, they coach there with them, they coach other places with them, or they know him, and they really respect him. And one coach talked about how he felt like he was the best coach he'd been around who set the standard for the building. Mm-hmm. Did he change things there by doing that? Was that a key part of his tenure?
Yeah, it was. And at the end, it came back to bite him a little bit. He did it with, his people skills, phrases, his talks, everything was about competition. They had a basketball goal in the meeting room, for, guys would come up, you make free throws, you win the competition, whatever they did was about competition. And he created an environment in that locker room and with that team that they called the Brotherhood. And the Brotherhood stickers were all over the place on the doors and cafeteria, the weight room, the indoor facility. And, that's why we call him Coach Bro, because he was in charge of the Brotherhood.
I've heard that phrase a lot. I heard that today. Mm-hmm. Is that something that became a tired phrase?
Well, yeah, because, he came with other stuff behind that. No gas, all gas, no brakes. He'd have a new one for us every year. And hey, when they were winning, everybody was cool with the Brotherhood. Yeah. They was cool with his catchy sayings and so forth. But, The radio guys got a hold of once they started going downhill. They were like, I don't want to hear about no brakes and gas and all that. I just want to hear about some talking or some tackling. So yeah, that was something that came and boomeranged on him.
Yeah, and Washington fans are probably saying, like, we just heard a bunch of phrases up here with Ron Rivera too. So, what you want are the results. And with when the coaching staffs are being changed, obviously Kyle Shanahan's a very good offensive play caller. Where do you think some of the mistakes that Dan Quinn made after Kyle left? Like, was it in who he hired, or what were the mistakes?
Yeah, at the time he had Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniel on the staff. And I didn't think they were ready. So I know he didn't. One was a quarterback's coach, one was a quality control assistant. So, they're young. It made sense to go get an established play caller in Steve Sarkisian, who had called plays before and had done a pretty good job of it. So that was, in retrospect, that might have been a mistake. But McClure might not have been ready because he goes to Tennessee, then the Rams, and gets the Green Bay job out of the clear blue early.
Right.
And then McDaniel gets Miami some 5 years later, where he's been under Kyle directly, not in some ancillary role for a couple years. But who knows if those guys were ready right then, that would have helped the Falcons out a great deal.
Where do you think, and then the last couple of years, what were some of the issues that popped up that led to, I guess, his demise in Atlanta?
Yeah, the drafting of offensive linemen was a problem for Thomas Dimitroff. Caleb McGarry wasn't very good at right tackle, so he couldn't pass block. He could just run block. So Matt Ryan was getting sacked,
Yeah.
at a high rate there at the end. And then they were missing on the draft altogether. Jalen Collins in the second round wasn't a good pick. They were missing in free agency. Dante Fowler didn't work out, right. So they didn't have a pass rush. Isaiah Oliver was a second round pick they thought could play corner. He ended up being a nickelback. Quinn had too much control of it with the roster and the drafting in retrospect. And they shouldn't have gave him those powers. That's kind of why, I'm on an off tangent here, but Belichick's not here. But because they gave Quinn too much power that he wasn't ready to, he shouldn't have been overseeing the draft. Thomas Dimitroff should have kept that or get a GM. But he was drafting the guys he liked and maybe missing on some better talented players and so forth.
So he had that much control there?
Yeah, PK. He bargained. He was hot. You got to remember, he's hot when he's coming from the Legion of Boom, and the owner wanted the hottest candidate, and he was able to parlay that into big influence over the 53 men and some of the draft situations. So it was a good it wasn't a good move for the organization. It was a good move for him.
So do you think, knowing what you know about him and knowing that Adam Peters has the control here in that regard, do you think this is a good move by Washington?
Yeah, I think he certainly can coach, and certainly can get the locker room behind him. And now that he doesn't have to worry about draft meetings, what the scouts are doing, grading who, his job will be to, we talked about buying the groceries and all that kind of good stuff from the old Parcells quote. Now he's just cooking. He's in the kitchen cooking and coaching up the team, trying to come up with ways to, get back on top in the NFC East there. So I think he's certainly capable of that. His experience here probably taught him, hey, I better have some control over the offense. If they're going to throw the ball when I should be running out the clock, I better stop them this time. So I think he got a lesson there that, everybody got. So whoever his offensive coordinator is going to be, he's not going to have as much freedom as he let Kyle had. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, well, I guess, if you're in the Super Bowl, you may want to run it a time or two late in the game. But also, the other thing, when you're a player's coach, as you know, and like that can be a negative term, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of guys that I know, when they talk about players coach, it's about, well, he helps us take care of our bodies. He helps us do this. Not just that we like him. It's that I like playing for him. But when you have a guy who is like, he is about relationships, he's about more than just being a player, that can also maybe lead to maybe other issues down the road. The word entitlement, sometimes you hear that. Was that an issue at the end of his tenure? And then when Arthur got there replacing him?
Yeah, as they were, it kind of started with Matt Ryan's 6-year, $150 million extension right after the 17th season. I'm in Minnesota, wherever that Super Bowl was. And so there, after that, Julio's upset. He keeps coming back in for money. They had already taken care of him once. Then they're taking care of Deion Jones. They're going for these second contracts because they think they have a championship level team. So they lean into that, situation and try to keep going as a franchise. And so it didn't happen. In 18, it's too late. They've already paid all this money and they can't win. They can't cover anybody. That game down in Houston, I remember Houston, Deshaun cut them up so bad they made the poor Will Fuller look like Lynn Swan that day. He had about 200 something yards. But yeah, so at that point, when the new people come in, you got the guys with contracts. They're not winning. They're 7-9, 7-9. Then they go 5 and whatever they went 4-16 under the Dan Quinn year. So those guys are still here. They still got contracts, and the old new group comes in and says, "Oh, we got to break up this sense of entitlement." So they start running them off one by one. Only kept Grady Jarrett and Jake Matthews. But when the Falcons went to Dallas to play what we secretly called the Entitlement Bowl, Quinn and them really lit into the Falcons, and Dallas won 40-3 or something. And I understand Quinn was pretty stoked about that win over the Falcons.
What did his style play a role in that, or was it more just about the contracts?
No, injuries were part of it.
Okay.
Your two main guys are Deion Jones and Keon O'Neal in his setup, and so, you take them out and you got backups out there that hurts. Then you got a rookie cornerback who can't really play, a second round pick, but you got to play him because you took him so high. You don't have a pass rush because, Vic Beasley just goes straight downhill after 2016. So, it was a bunch of factors, injuries, Beasley disappearing on them, draft picks that couldn't play. And it was all just collision of everything that could go wrong. Because at that Super Bowl defense, 9 of the 11 starters were in their first or second year. So they're thinking, hey, we got defense for the next, 5-6 years. But, I can go by one. Jalen Collins starts getting suspended for weed. Deion gets hurt. Keanu gets hurt. You can't find Vic Beasley. Grady Jarrett's about the only one that kept on playing through. But yeah, everything on 3 different levels went bad for that defense that they were expecting to carry them, kind of take over as Matt got older, and they could take more off Matt's plate and still contend, but it just didn't work like that.
Were you surprised at were you surprised by that Super Bowl run?
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. The teams before them were a lot better under Coach Mike Smith. We were planning Super Bowl coverages at that point in 12 and 10. But this team, they started real hot under Quinn, then finished real bad. And then they were always streaky under Quinn. And then the next year they got hot right in the middle of the season. And I'm thinking about the week 14. I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, oh God, they're getting ready to win the division. And wow, there's nobody in their way in the playoffs except for the Packers. And they had already kind of dusted them up already. So it was a quick it was a late burn on that season, playoff, it was like, hey, maybe they can just get back to the playoffs. But, late in the season, it was like, wait a minute, they got a shot to get to the Super Bowl.
So two more things, D, and I appreciate your time. One, is there a style like of his teams? Is there a trait that his teams typically displayed?
Yeah, they're going to fight. They're going to fight. They're going to fight. It's going to be physical, and they're going to get after people. You saw it even in the Super Bowl. They got after Brady. They were jumping routes. They just learned the field too long, but they were jumping routes early. They were lighting them up. Grady Jarrett was in the backfield. He's going to try to attack people. And the one thing that he does, he likes boxing. He's a big boxing guy. So the team ends up watching a lot of boxing, fights and, boxing stories. So they, he thinks that, those are the true warriors that go to fight in the ring. And so they'll be hearing a lot of Ali stories. I know we saw old Harbaugh doing that on the internet last week, but they'll hear about a lot of Ali, a lot of Liston, Evander. He'll have some boxing folks come to practice. That's that gonna battle. If he's gonna lose, he's gonna lose swinging, and that's the way his teams play.
Well, if he talks about Smoking Joe, I'll be all for that too. So
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he's got some Smoking Joe in his cachet.
So last one is then Atlanta hires Raheem Morris. What'd you think of that hire? And that guy was here. I think it's well deserved that he gets another shot. What did you think of that hire?
Yeah, I think it was a good hire for them. Certainly somebody with head coaching experience, someone that knows, he's not guessing. He's not doing it for the first time. And, to be fortunate enough to get a second shot at it, that was good for him. So I given who was out there, basically in the head coaching realm was Belichick, Harbaugh, and Mike Vrabel, and Raheem. And so Raheem is a good fit for them. Harbaugh and Belichick would have required a whole major, the owner stepping aside and going to his booth and letting them take over and dictate the thing. And he didn't want to do that again after Quinn. So we'll see how Raheem goes. He's got two first-time coordinators on offense and defense, so we don't know what we're getting there. But he kept the special teams coordinator, Marquise Williams. So, that if they don't get a quarterback, it won't matter. So, but for Raheem, it's a good outlook.
And that's what I say here is all the stuff we talk about Dan Quinn. If you don't hire the right staff and find the quarterback, it doesn't matter who you have.
That's right. And you got to take multiple swings at it. If you can't get a veteran, you got to go in the draft. If you can't, if you can't get on a free agency or trade, or you got to turn over every stone. Draft one first, draft one late. That's Washington kind of did that.
They've done that a couple of times.
Cousins and RG3. I do that every year till I find a quarterback.
Until you have one, you got to keep finding one.
Yep.
There you go.
No doubt, John.
Listen, man, I appreciate your time. Great insight. Thank you very much.
Sure. No problem, John. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Dear Orlando for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday morning with another episode. I'll talk to you next time.